Looks like we have a few folks. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day and joining us. We are excited to share our experience with you. How's everyone's day going? You can use the chat to tell us. Going well? Great. Okay, then let's get into it. Um, Again, thank you so much for making time for this. And as you all know, many of us feel the pressure of planning and implementing web projects, whether they are websites, applications, and ensuring success against all odds. Anthro-Tech, a human-centered design consultancy, partnered with Washington Technology Solutions, or WATEC, a development powerhouse, to create the recently launched website for the Washington State Department of Services for the Blind. We set out with an ambitious plan and successfully launched the website in fall of 2024. The project was on schedule, within budget, and on time. And today, we'd like to share 7 lessons that we learned while designing and developing the website for DSP. I'd like for all of you to meet today's panel, and I can start us off. I am Isha Bhattacharya, the Director of User Experience Research at Anthro-Tech and the project lead from the Anthro-Tech team. Mary, would you please introduce yourself and pass it to Hannah?
Sure. My name is Mary Craig. I'm the Chief Information Officer for the Washington State Department of Services for the Blind. And Hannah, on to you.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Hannah Staten. I am the organizational change manager at Anthro-Tech that worked on this project with Aisha, Mary, and Wendy. Over to you, Wendy.
Hello, everyone. I'm Wendy Wickstrom. I'm WATEC's Web and User Experience Manager, and our team was the development partner on this great project.
Thank you, panelists. So during our time together today, we'll cover the goal for the project, the lessons learned, and finally open it up for question and answers. We know how excited you all are, and the Q&A is typically where we get a lot of great conversation going. So now that you know just a little bit about the project, we'll start by understanding the goal for this project. Mary, would you tell us why DSP embarked on this journey?
Well, this is a quote from my executive director here at DSB. And he said, people should know DSB to be a place of understanding and empathy, a place of community, but also a place where you'll get pushed to reach that next level in your life, whatever you want that to be. And it was an incredibly powerful experience to be part of this project where we transformed our old and dated website into a user-centered, accessible site. Now we're going to talk about the lessons we learned in the project.
Thank you, Mary. So our first lesson is trust the process. So do your research and test your assumptions. Try something, change it. If it doesn't work or if you get more data, and then try it again. Base your decisions on human-centered design. Now, you might wonder what human-centered design is. Many of you might already know what it is or have even experienced it yourself. So human-centered design is our proven practice. This is how we do everything we do. It is inherently a data-driven process. So we make informed decisions and recommendations based on data rather than assumptions and opinions. So it has a few different steps. During research and discover, we collect valuable information about the end user. The goal here is to understand the people and the problems we are designing for. Next up is synthesize and ideate. And this is where we generate a variety of ideas that focus on the needs and desires of our end users that we've uncovered during the research phase. During conceptualize and prototype, we evaluate ideas for merit and create something that's more tangible. It takes these ideas and maybe sometimes the best ideas that can then be evaluated for their usefulness. Then we test and iterate. So basically, we get our prototype or our concept in the hands of people, or in this case, in front of people who might engage with that website and see what it's like for them to use it. Based on their feedback, we can either go back, make more changes, and basically do this testing a few times till we feel confident about the product that we're putting together. So during implement and refine, once the design has proven itself with the end user, it can be launched and monitored for real-world success. Our next lesson is turn constraints into superpowers. Most projects have constraints, but with a creative mindset, constraints can inspire a project's priorities and principles. And speaking of constraints, we were designing a website for the blind, which means people with varying levels of visual disabilities. It was really important for us that we reach this actual audience for true human-centered design. We needed creative project planning where we plan for change instead of assuming everything would go perfectly. We also had a relatively short time, about 9 months, to turn around a new brand and a website. And I didn't tell you earlier, we also redesigned the brand, not just the website. So we had to be laser focused. So this ended up being a very good thing. And given the short time frame and a niche audience, we prioritized research outreach to DSP's users above all else. This kept us focused on accessibility, especially when we had competing ideas or priorities. So what I'm sharing on screen is our project timeline. So we kicked off the project in December of 2023 and launched in September 2024. We started it off with discovery and planning phase, where we did some onboarding, conducted a user survey to understand who it is that this website is serving. We also did an inventory and an audit of the content that actually lives on the website. We then went on to do content and user experience design. This is also when we conducted a content governance workshop. This helped decide how DSP would be managing the content sustainably in future beyond launch. We designed the content and the information architecture, and then went out and tested our ideas with people through a tree test. This ensured our navigation decisions made sense for the people who are using the site. Then we started making the design that brought all of our content decisions to life, and we made sure that what we're designing for works for everyone, that it is usable and accessible. And having an accessibility specialist was really important for this reason every step of the way. Once we all kind of agreed on the content and user experience design decisions, the WATEC team then started developing the site. Content authors from DSP spent time improving the content, and we were there to support them, and this ensured that we finished strong. And closer to launch, we conducted an accessibility evaluation and tested the draft site with representative users. We also worked on redesigning DSP's brand. So this included choosing the right fonts, the colors that define DSP, and the DSP logo, and some of the other material that DSP might need to be successful. So things like a new email signature, Zoom background. So what you're seeing, for those of you who can see Mary's background, that's one of the Zoom backgrounds we designed. And throughout this process, project management and organizational change management was instrumental to keep the train on the tracks. Every step of the way, we ensured that whenever we are creating artifacts and deliverables, that they are actionable and helped the next set of people to get a jump start. And I wonder if Wendy has something to add about the timeline.
Yeah, I was just going to add. Thank you, Aisha. I just wanted to note that 3 months is quite an aggressive timeline from the time that development started to the time that we launched the site. But DSB and the whole team work together weekly to help us prioritize features and functions, get clarification on questions we had, and really gave us the ability to keep us moving forward and deliver iterative features to the project team for review and testing throughout. One of the biggest inputs into the development process that really helps to expedite is having very detailed content models. So, meaning the structure of the content that you're building, as well as annotated design files. And we got both of those from our content strategists and design partners at Anthro-Tech, and that really enabled us to meet a very aggressive timeline.
Thank you, Wendy. And just to give you kind of a sneak peek, early on in the project, when we spoke to stakeholders at DSB, they told us that this agency supports a variety of different audiences. The website needs to reach everyone and talk to everyone. Many of you in the audience are also people who are working at government agencies, so you really understand what it can be like, when you're trying to design something that's serving a variety of people. We also learned that people do not always know what DSP does, or at least the breadth of services that DSP provides. So on your screen, you'll see two screenshots. The one above is from the older website. So all of the services that were offered were housed under services. And based on research and the project's goals, we decided to bring them to the forefront, since showcasing what the agency does was essential to help people connect to the right services. So now you don't have to go looking, it's front and center. And in the new design, you'll notice you start by learning about the services DSP offers. Then you learn more about career support for those people who are looking for employment opportunities. Then there's independent living services, and then followed by youth and families. So anything that might be relevant for those who are 18 or younger. And then finally, some services for businesses that are trying to make their workplaces more inclusive. So by treating the need for accessibility as a power and not a constraint, we came up with a navigation and labels that were highly plain talked and help people find the information more quickly. On to the third lesson. So our third lesson is put a face on human-centered design with personas. Personas humanize your data and benefit projects in numerous ways. They help people understand your user's mindset. Everyone has their own ideas of who the user is. But with personas, people can put themselves in the mindset of their users. So this really gives a project a shared shorthand that helps prioritize the decisions that we're making. Most, if not all, people that are served by DSP are people with a visual disability. So personas helped us understand their needs, the technologies they use, so that the website serves them regardless of how they are accessing it. So we started a project with a survey that helped create these personas. We created 4 personas: current customer CAM, someone who's already getting services from DSP; potential customer Pete, this is someone who needs services from DSP, but doesn't know DSP exists, or how can DSP help them. Business Bruce is a business owner who wants to make their workplace more accessible and needs help, knowing how to go about it. And lastly, Liaison Linda. So these are people who are helping others connect to DSP. This could be family, friends, could be a physician, or even staff at schools who could help share resources that DSP has. So persona help everyone see a shared goal rooted in data and evidence. Here's a little more detail of what each persona contained. So for the current customer CAM, we made a list of their primary motivations. So what might bring them to the website, their goals, what tasks they might do on the website. So we have to remember, when somebody is coming to a government website, they are there to complete a task. They are usually not just casually exploring. They are there to get some information, do something. So it was important to understand what is that thing for each of our different personas. We also included some demographics, like their education levels, primary language, and how they typically interact with DSP. We also use data from the survey to tell their story in plain language so that it remains memorable and explains the many nuances of their experiences as they interact with DSP. Wendy, would you tell us about our fourth lesson?
Absolutely. Our fourth lesson is to find your cross-functional champions. Really focus on designing a core team for the project that brings all of the voices to the table, including people with a variety of skills and knowledge. For this project, our core team consisted of members from most service areas within DSB, helping us to really get unique perspectives and bringing the expertise of the people who work directly with the clients to the forefront. Every time we made decisions on the project, we took every DSB unit into consideration and had a great support on this project from the leadership team as well. Next slide. Thank you. So in setting up the core team, we ensured that we had really good representation from all three partners. For DSB, this meant experts from key business units, a good mix of leadership roles within the agency, and customer-facing staff. The leadership roles really helped us to understand the agency's vision, while the customer-facing team members were crucial in unpacking customer needs and ensuring that what we were designing would work for their customers. For Anthro-Tech, we had a core team with experts from a number of different focus areas, including user experience research, design, content strategy, information architecture, plain language, accessibility, project management, and organizational change management. And on the WATEC side, we brought the development experts, those who are experts in developing Drupal content management system websites, front-end user interface development, and of course, that technical quality assurance. Our developers, are well-versed in implementing accessibility, and a really exciting part of this project for us was that we had an opportunity to test and iterate our website's navigation system, which we use on all of the websites that we build, quite a large portfolio. That navigation system was usability tested and approved a number of different times on different projects, but we were able to really dig into it this time and find that while it checked the boxes, it wasn't the most usable navigational system. And so we worked together with both DSB and Anthro-Tech to kind of undo that and start from the ground up. And now we have a navigational system that we can use on all of the websites we produce that is both accessible and usable for those using assistive technologies or other navigational methods. Throughout the project, we had weekly core team meetings where we report statuses, we work through priority topics, and adjust the project plan as needed. Anthro-Tech and WATEC on projects like this also meet regularly, during the design and development phases. During design, WATEC consults with Anthro-Tech to ensure that the design is in line with our development standards, and really, what we can do from a development lens. And then during development, it reverses, and Anthro-Tech's design and content strategist teams consult with us on any questions we have on those content models, the design specifications, and ensure that we are delivering the product as designed. Hannah, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you so much, Wendy. Just as Wendy showed y'all how we put together a team based on each agency's strengths and even the individuals within those agencies that were joining the team, you can do the exact same thing for your universe of stakeholders who are all invested or interested in the project. So our fifth lesson today is learn your stakeholder strengths and play accordingly. I was the organizational change manager on this project, but you don't have to be an OCM or have an OCM to do change management. And if you're new to change management, it's got kind of one of those corporate-y names, but actually it's a pretty simple concept. And that is that all projects are going to create change. That's why you're doing them, right? And change, when it meets human beings, means a little hesitancy, a little resistance. That's just human nature. We don't naturally love change. So if we acknowledge that and we strategize for that, we can actually think of ways to make this change less stressful and less scary, and in turn bring our stakeholders kind of on the project journey so that our outcomes and our goals, what we're trying to achieve, so that we can succeed. So you can see when we're talking about how do you make a project more resilient in times of change management can be really key. And again, you don't have to be a change manager to do change management. I'm going to share in this presentation 2 great ways you can bring a change management lens to your project and just increase its resilience. The first is this lesson. The first is take time to get to know all your stakeholders and understand their strengths and their needs and their concerns and how they feel about the project and how the project will impact them. You can almost think about it as what are the baseball cards with your stakeholders and what are their stats on those baseball cards. So every project has a universe of stakeholders that are going to be impacted by the project and maybe have a role that will impact the project. They can be internal to an organization. So, what employees might be affected, what staff, what leadership. And they can also be external to a project. So your public or your constituents or your consumers or your customers or whoever that may be. When most of us start a project, we definitely think through all of our project management. We cover all of those bases, managing time, scope, and budget. And we also probably have a list in our head of the people that will be involved in the project. What we're recommending here is take that one step further and sit down and make an inventory, list out all of your stakeholders and start to map the connections between them and look for ways that they can actually help power your project. Because a lot of times they might even be an impediment. They might be a naysayer, or maybe they're going to hold up progress or whatever that may be. But with a little bit of strategy and forethought, you can actually use them as wind in your sails for a project. So if we sit down, we map them all out, we can then figure out what do they need to feel involved and what do they need to feel informed and plan accordingly for that. And if we do that along the way throughout a project journey, by the time our project is ready for prime time, we've hopefully made them into really engaged and informed advocates of what we're doing rather than confused or checked out or even critical. I'm sure we've all been on a project where we worked our hardest and we got near the finish line and somebody out of some random department raised their hand and said, I don't like this for this reason. And it caused a spin out at the last minute. That is what we are seeking to avoid because we want to turn that person into our friend from the beginning. And if we invest in kind of this extra layer of thinking through our stakeholders, it can actually help protect things like time, scope, and budget, those more classic cases of project management. So on the next slide, I want to give you an example of what we mean by mapping out our stakeholders. On this slide, you will see what's called a stakeholder map in change management. On the left, it's kind of like a Venn diagram. They're not always forming into a Venn diagram. It's just in this case, we did. So with DSB on the left, in the large blue circle, we have our internal stakeholders. And on the right, with the yellow circle, we have our external stakeholders. And then all of the bubbles in between show the connections. They are either internal, external, or kind of merging in the middle because they interface with each other. And you can, by their placement, start to see connections and opportunities. I'll give you an example. By mapping out our stakeholders, we were able to tell that for us doing change management during this project, keeping the DSB employees really engaged and informed and knowledgeable about the new website was going to be key because they are actually on the front lines of reaching 3, if not 4, of our personas, our key audiences that we wanted the website to do a better job of connecting with. So you can see there that the DSB employees are touching prospective customers, liaisons, and current customers. And that they are actually going to be a really important source of referral traffic and say to these people, hey, you should check out our website. You should go here to do this action or take this step. Another example here would be in mapping out all of our stakeholders. I mean, Mary and I literally sat down and we filled out a giant spreadsheet together and then we made this map. So it was like a really fun hour of just naming names and figuring out who everyone was. But we remembered, oh, you know what? In addition to the Department of Services for the Blind, we have some external partners. And in this map, you'll see like the Washington Council of the Blind, they are key to helping us reach our stretch persona, which is business employers. So you start to see these opportunities where if you take time to invest in engaging these stakeholders, you can actually turn to them and ask them for specific ways to support the project that will turn into wind in your sails. Last example would be looking internally. We have 2 core leads on this project. Shout out to Liddell, who might be on the call but isn't here, was Mary's kind of partner in this whole thing. But also, we have 2 levels of leadership that both of these core leads are responsible for bringing along on the journey. There's a steering committee, but there's also an advisory committee. So by seeing that, we're able to map out and say, okay, how can the core project team be arming and empowering our core leads to be in communication and sharing what needs to be shared with not just one level of leadership, but 2. And we built that into our workflow. And that meant when things came up, we had people we could turn to that were well informed on the project who were able to help us out. And we hadn't accidentally neglected one level of our leadership. So this is an example how if you just take that extra time at the beginning of a project to inventory and map your stakeholders, it can serve you for making your project more resilient when you're up against constraints like 9 months to get a whole new brand and website done. On the next slide, I will share, I had said that there were going to be 2 things I wanted to share today about bringing change management to a project. And the second is our lesson 6 today, which is increase the success of your project by telling the project story. This is so easy in the hubbub and the chaos and the never-ending to-do list to forget to explain to people why you're doing what you're doing and the so what of it and why they should care and what they will get out of it, and that you're not just another person from a department over knocking on their door begging for a cup of sugar, but you are here to actually provide them value with the work that you are doing. So, the first way we touched on is empowering your stakeholders. This telling your story is all about just the way that at the beginning of the project, you plotted out who you want to keep informed and engaged. This is all about how you're going to do that, and that's with your project story. So every single milestone in your project, that's an opportunity to take your story outside of your core team and take it to some of those stakeholders. Maybe it's all of them, maybe it's some of them, maybe it's external, maybe it's internal. It depends on the deliverable, it depends on the moment in time. But take it on the road. Go show people what you're doing. Go explain to them what you're doing, and do it in ways that put their like what they get out of the situation front and center for them. So an easy way to do this is, if you recall at the beginning of this presentation, Aisha showed a beautiful project timeline of all the deliverables we had to get done in that 9 months. You can sit down and look at your project timeline and say, okay, wow, personas. We're going to develop personas. We need to make sure all of our employees are on the same page about who our personas are. We should take a moment and go give a presentation to our employees about these personas and maybe think about some ways that they can use them in their work and make their work easier. Or, okay, we just finished up our branding workshop and we have an exciting new brand that's going to go on the website. Maybe to generate interest in the new website, we go do a sneak peek at the new brand and get people's feedback and thoughts and that kind of thing. You can, of course, just plow through a project and get all of your deliverables done and meet all of your timelines and deadlines. But it's kind of that classic, if a tree falls in the forest and no one's there to hear it, does anybody know about it? You want to be making sure throughout the thing you're shouting your work from the rooftop so that people are getting interested and involved and engaged. And in terms of involved and engaged, every project has a moment where you flip the switch and it turns on and you launch what it is you have been setting out to do this whole time. And change does not happen instantaneously in that moment. You have to do a lot after that to reinforce all of your good work. However, at that moment, the moment of launch, we like to call it, that is your single biggest opportunity to grab people's attention, whether internal stakeholders or external stakeholders, and earn their awareness of what's going on, ask them to adopt what it is you're doing, and really secure momentum that you need to cement that change. So always think about your moment of launch and what are you going to do to get the story of, kind of that's the crescendo moment in your story. That's the pinnacle. What are you going to go out there to do to cement that? So those are kind of the two main things I wanted to share today about how anyone can bring some change management to their project to make it more resilient. In conclusion, I just thought I'd share kind of an overall change management goal that you can think about here on this slide. Ask yourself, how can we help our stakeholders become aware, stay aware, adopt whatever it is. In this case, for us, it was a new website and a new brand. How are they going to adopt that platform? Maybe for you, it's a new process or something like that. But how are we going to help them actually feel incentivized to adopt it? And how do we turn them from kind of, we like to say, from naysayers to yay sayers, become actual advocates for what it is we're producing? So it's less like, oh, did you see this is changing and now I got to learn a whole new thing? And it's more like, whoa, this is changing and that's going to make our job a lot easier because now this is going to be automated or now this is going to be easier for us. So I would say next time you're working on a project, ask yourself, what change does the new website represent to stakeholders? In this case, it's a new website, but what change does our project represent to stakeholders? And go through that exercise. It helps put yourself in their shoes. In our case for the DSB website, for our internal stakeholders, change showed up as not just one thing, but kind of a many-headed entity that took different shapes and forms throughout the project. It was a new project. It required our internal stakeholders to participate, to show up, to come to meetings, to get informed, to get educated, to give input. And that was in addition to their daily work. That's a change. It was also a new process. We were asking people to get involved with the human-centered design process and understand that we were going to be using data from that process to make our decisions. And for some people, that was brand new. They hadn't approached a project using human-centered design before. And lastly, there was what we came up with ourselves, the product itself, a new website that we were asking people to use and get familiar with and refer their clients to and that kind of thing. And so throughout the project, change took a couple of different forms. And by sitting down and thinking that through, that helped us empathize along the way with how we could position our project to people to better understand what they needed to feel comfortable with the change. And then lastly, for our external stakeholders, it was pretty simple. The project, the redesigning of the DSB website and brand, that was one big change for them, which is one day the DSB website looked a lot different. And we were asking them to come see and discover and explore and participate in and engage in this new website in new and different ways. And so that helped us prepare for that launch moment I touched on earlier, just by thinking through how is what we're doing, how is that change going to impact our stakeholders? How are they going to experience it? And how are they going to feel it? So by doing some of those things, again, it does take a little extra time. It does take a little extra effort and another lens to put on or another cap, so to speak. But you don't have to be a trained change practitioner to think through these things. It can help make your project a lot more resilient when the chips are down or circumstances change or you need help from somebody, or you need to ease the way for something, generating these relationships and looking out for them helps a lot with project resiliency. Over to you, Mary.
So it's easy to focus on meeting deadlines and deliverables, but when a project presents that rare chance to explore something new or different, see if you can create openness to new possibilities. This could be the secret ingredient that takes your efforts to the next level. For instance, this is one of the personas we created. Originally, we didn't scope for it, but we knew this was an area that the agency wanted to explore. At the time of the project, we didn't have any content on the website that would help businesses know how they could work with us. So during the discovery and research phase, we explored the possibility of creating a stretch persona to become future ready as an agency. This persona has proven helpful in designing our services for businesses as we now have a shared understanding of who we are serving. On this slide, you see our old website. And as one of our stakeholders had said early on, we might be coming across a very governmental agency, and we don't want to be that voice. We really want to be a voice of support and guiding people towards their goals. As an agency, we knew that our website was not accurately portraying the care and support our staff demonstrates when working with our customers. During the discovery phase, we heard from customers who validated our assumptions and told us we were fixing the right problems. Our site looked dated, it was hard to navigate, hard to understand, and it was not human-centered. I'm very proud of our new website. And as one of our usability study participants said it feels less cluttered and designed to be accessible and seamless even when used with a screen reader. There aren't extra things that screen readers often pick up, which can be overwhelming for many people. The minimalist approach, with a focus on the tasks someone is coming to the website to do, has been a game changer. Another usability participant said, it's very rare for any government website to be this easy to navigate. Find the information you need, see the services they offer, use a contact form. Our site is now more human-centered, accessible, easier to comprehend, easier to navigate, aesthetically pleasing, and works seamlessly on all devices. For a smaller agency like yours, it being easy to maintain has definitely been a plus. Redesigning the brand of the agency was a surprising aspect of the project. When we started, based on guidance from our leadership team, we knew we did not want to make changes to our brand, only minor cleanup and refresh. That meant our logo, the person with a cane walking on the globe, wasn't going to change. But as we worked with the Anthro-Tech team and the UX designer really understood the emotion behind our logo and gave us some interesting directions to consider. We were going to test the option in a focus group, but personally, I imagined that our agency wouldn't be ready for drastic changes to the logo. Yet, I was pleasantly surprised when our leadership team got excited about the concept of a person walking with a cane and the path being an upward journey, to be able to communicate that we understand what it's like to manage changes to one's vision. And although hard, DSB is here to help. As one of our stakeholders said, in the words of Elizabeth Gilbert, onwards and upwards.
And with that, we open it up for some questions and or reactions.
Aisha, I had one question come in. How How do we keep our website project moving forward when leadership keeps shifting priorities?
Who wants to take that one?
This is Mary Craig. I will say that when we started this project, it was something that I discussed with our executive team early on, that if we were going to undertake this and do so in, we did it in 9 months, which typically this project is completed in 18 to 24 months. So when we had this opportunity, we had limited federal funds that had to be spent by within 9 months. So that really was a constraint that was really challenging. But I think the key really is to engage with your executive leadership, and by getting the people at the highest echelon to support you. We did have some challenges during the project where people had competing priorities. And so I just went to our senior leadership and said, we need to free up staff time so that they can devote this. Remember, we have a very short time period to get this completed. And, with that executive support, I think is critical to any project success. But that was how we managed it in our project.
Thank you for that. We're having more questions come in. How do we navigate through staffing changes, especially in partner areas such as ITS and our project managers? Who wants to take that one? That seems to be a problem a lot of people are having right now.
Yeah, I think budget's also a problem, right? So my answer as a project lead for a lot of different efforts is it is challenging to resource internally because we are all so overloaded and we are, losing staff, sadly. What's I think really great about a firm like Anthro-Tech is that they have that skill set, that PM skill set that they can bring to the table, and they know this process inside and out. And so they're coming in often when I've worked with agency staff project managers, it's their first web project, so they don't even know like what steps to start with, what to take, and that kind of impedes progress until they really get on board and up to speed. So leveraging a partner who has the experience in the type of project you're doing, I think is absolutely valuable, and also just being real, in government, a lot more reliable. And they push you. They push you to keep moving more so than we do ourselves.
Thank you. Yeah, I think having good partners, good vendors, knowing how to vet them is always useful in web projects. Another question, this one's for Mary. I know your team has limited IT resources. What was the impact to your resources throughout the project timeline?
Honestly, Susie, this is where it really, leaning on our incredible partners, Wendy's team at WaTech and Anthro-Tech, there was a lot of impact to me. But as far as my IT resources, the IT department wasn't really impacted. The impacts were really those people involved on the project team. So, like our communications manager also manages our website. So she was heavily involved with this project. And there were times when she had other departments saying, I need you to do this. I need you to do this. I need you to do this. And she was getting, quite frankly, overwhelmed. And so at that point, I went to our boss and said, this needs to stop. She needs to be focused on this project, and she's not going to be able to stay focused if she's continually getting all these other projects thrown at her. So really, what our executive leadership said was, okay, no more communications projects until this website project is completed. And that really helped free up her time. And then we also had to do that for some of the program resources that were on the project so that their deadlines maybe were a little more flexible so that they could focus on the project as well. But really, I think what it comes down to is having those good, strong partners who can support you. And, Hannah was incredible for OCM. Aisha was incredible on the project management side. Really, I can't say enough positive things about WaTech and Anthro-Tech, and I've been incredibly impressed. Anthro-Tech is one of the best companies that we've done business with to do a project in half the normal time and to have such a great outcome and to have such a well-managed project throughout the process. I can't tell you what a game changer that was.
Thank you for that, Mary. Aisha, somebody asked, can a firm like AT, Anthro-Tech, scale to work with CMS vendors?
Jeff, would you like to expand on your question a bit?
No, I think he's on mute.
Can't hear you somehow, Jeff.
Do you mean different content management systems, Jeff? We can't hear you. Sorry.
Maybe put it in the chat. Yeah.
In the meantime, I'll answer Maddie's question while we're getting that from Jeff. Yes, so Aisha primarily was the main point of contact and the one driving us forward on this project. And that's a role that we've really, in multiple engagements with a government agency customer like DSB, a government team like mine, and Anthro-Tech in the loop. We do rely pretty heavily on Anthro-Tech to be able to provide that PM and really kind of bring all of the teams together in that high level oversight of the project, and they do great at it.
Something I'd like to add to what Wendy said. For project management, we also had another team member, Chrissy, who is a certified project management professional. So she was helping more with making sure all of the smaller pieces, the tactical strategy is working, whereas I was helping the team with more of the strategic kind of direction. So we made a good team of making sure we're working really closely both with DSP and WaTech, and also ensuring that our team internally at Anthro-Tech knows what needs to be done at what times.
Great. Yeah, Jeff put a little clarification in the chat, Aisha.
So I'm thinking, Jeff, that you're asking maybe if if potentially Anthro-Tech could provide only the PM services on a project?
Yes. Can you hear me
Okay.
now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better.
So one thing is I'll just be completely transparent. So our community colleges, are using vendors off the state approved list, and I've heard varying stories of success and not as great of successes based on a project manager being successful from the vendor or not. And it puts a lot of strain on our limited team, especially the IT piece, when they're just trying to manage our side of the equation. And if you feel like the vendor also needs some managing, I think I just was wondering if that's the type of thing that vendors such as Anthro-Tech can say, listen, we may not do everything for you, but if you want us to help make sure that there's quality control and helping you guys navigate this process, we can come alongside you if you guys have a plan to make sure it actually happens. Because as you said, we get pulled internally and have less resources, and maybe it's even just like, okay, so here's your deliverable, and as you said, tell your bosses this is all you all are working on this week or 2 weeks, whatever.
Yes, Jeff, the short answer is yes, and the long answer is yes to project management, but also to organizational change management. You can work with us and get our expertise in project management, but as you saw through what we shared, the organizational change management piece is also very important. So we can work with you in kind of understanding the landscape of the different stakeholders and then customize solutions for you so that we can do some of the heavy lift and you're playing more of the role of a reviewer and saying, yes, this seems like this is the voice and tone that we want to have when communicating with our stakeholders. Yes, that is a necessary pairing.
And Hannah, Kim had a question about OCM. She said, great success story and presentation. Love the focus on change management. What are some key OCM tasks or deliverables that could or should be included in a project with little to no budget? Any recommended resources to leverage?
So a really good question, Kim. I would recommend if you are just at your scrappiest and need to do the minimum viable product to be successful in change management, I would just recommend making even a spreadsheet or a table where you list out all your stakeholder groups and you define what the change is for them. Is it that they're going to have to use a new process or a new product or whatever that is going to be? And then I would list what deliverables might they be interested in knowing about? Do they need to know about it to give input, or do they need to know about it just to be brought along on the awareness journey? Because that's something that can happen often too, is that somebody gets wind of some of your great work and they wanted to give feedback on that type of thing, and you've reached a point where actually your feedback's going to be really disruptive. So if you can actually note to yourself ahead of time, maybe I take it to the stakeholder to give them, room to provide feedback. However much room is up to you, but maybe you're even just making that gesture. So you've kind of got those three columns, and then that will help you determine when do you go engage them. And just having that list you can refer to will help remind you of maybe I should reach out to this person to do X activity at this point in the project. I would say another thing too, bare minimum, is maybe make an elevator pitch slide. I like to call it a North Star. Like, what is the project? What is the goal? What are the defining priorities? I think that can help too with the previous question about leadership when they're always changing priorities. If you take something to your stakeholder group that says, in our case, it was accessibility is number one. We are not going to do anything to sacrifice accessibility, and we need to have, it's not just A- accessibility standards, B+, like we have to have A+ accessibility standards on this website, given the audiences we serve. You take your priorities, your 3 to 5. If you have any more than that, I pray for you. But you write those down, and then when you meet with different stakeholder groups and they say, well, I think it should be that, and I think it should be this, you can say, well, we chose X because that's the most in line with our priorities. So if you have that kind of North Star slide that lets you tell the story of your work and kind of shows how you're making decisions throughout the project, that can be a really good way to do the maximum amount of communications with very little input. And then I would recommend looking up the ADKAR model. That's capital ADKAR. And it talks about how you can move stakeholders kind of through awareness, desire, knowledge, ability, and reinforcement. And those are kind of what you need for a change to stick. And that can just give a nice structure to thinking through your change management work.
Great.
And yes, PM and OCM.
Thank you. That was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Full of acronyms over here. So yeah, it looks like Wendy's addressing the comment about a listserv. So looks like we're talking about Mary Craig might have some insight as to that, but it looks like we're taking care of that in the chat. However, that was kind of on an accessibility topic. We had a question come in about accessibility training. Aisha, I'll direct this one to you, but whoever wants to answer. What's the easiest way to get started with accessibility training if we have no formal program? Yeah, Aisha, insights on that?
Let's see. Who asked that question? I just want to make sure I'm addressing the right person.
Oh, it just came in via a message. Yeah, there
I
wasn't like
see.
a full name.
Yeah, so if you're embarking on your journey with accessibility, knowing that it is not just a legal requirement, but it is also the right thing to do, one of the first things we recommend is to talk to one of our accessibility specialists and kind of help us understand where you are at and what might make sense for you. Because sometimes, depending on whether you have some level of accessibility or you're just about starting, what might make sense for you could be very different. So I would recommend maybe looking at this community of practice that Wendy's talking about. First, understand where your fellow agencies are at. That is sometimes a good way to do it. But if you feel like you're ready for some support, some external support, we have a team of accessibility specialists at Anthro-Tech, and we'd love to kind of talk to you and understand what your needs are and recommend a few things. And yeah, a conversation is typically a good way to start this.
Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about the training that your team is working on, as well as some of the other efforts that are happening within the state, like in DES?
Yeah, we have a lot of activity going on right now between the governor's executive order 24-05, which increases the employment of people with disabilities, to, the Title II efforts and the user-01 accessibility policy. There's a lot of support now to help agencies get compliant, and not a lot of funding, mind you. So we're doing this by working together. And the state community of practice group, we have a team site. There's a meeting this week coming up where we're going to be talking about what agencies are doing to become compliant with Title II and where the challenges and barriers are, and then just collaborating. And that's a lot of what that community of practice does is there's a lot of collaboration and conversation around where our challenges are. And then we work together to try to find solutions. And along with that, there's a lot of training that's coming out. And there is some incredible work coming out of the DIN, it's the Disability Inclusion Network. They are working on developing training for the workforce and to help educate people. I have a new digital accessibility coordinator who will be doing some training through the accessibility community of practice. I think next month we're talking about having him do a training on creating accessible PDFs. But there are a lot of opportunities, a lot of things that you can get involved in. But I highly recommend, if you're not part of the state accessibility community of practice team site, that you get connected there. That's a great place to ask questions, to collaborate. We have a lot of great accessibility people coming together. IPMA Forum this year will have a session on, well, I'm planning a session on accessibility at IPMA Forum. And then in October is the Accessibility Matters Conference, and that's going to be at St. Martin's. And I highly recommend that people check that out because, again, I've heard from a lot of accessibility advocates within the state that they've met and they've developed relationships that have helped them find success in their agency. So, again, it goes back to that Helen Keller quote: alone we can do so little, together we can do so much. And so I'm all about the power of collaboration. Find those partners like Anthro-Tech, like WATech, that you can work with, but also develop those relationships with other people who are trying to find success in the same things that you're struggling with.
Mary, it looks like there was a follow-up. Maddie asked if you can repeat which network you're sending your new digital ally specialist to, something like Seattle Accessibility, some blank.
I am sorry, I'm not seeing the question.
It's the third one from the bottom on mine.
Okay, just right where I can't see. Um, are we talking about the community of practice?
I
Oh,
think
here we
that's
go. Here we go.
Yeah.
Axcon, CSUN, and Lainey Feingold on LinkedIn. Yes, those are great resources. Ooh, Mike Gifford. I'm not familiar with him. Thank you for that. Which network you're sending your new specialist to? My new digital accessibility coordinator is assisting with the state accessibility community of practice. And that is a Microsoft Teams site. If you're not part of the state shared tenant, but you work in the public sector, you can contact Tavares Terry at WATech to get added. And then Brianna also shared the IPMA website. The Information Professional Management Association is a nonprofit that's unique to Washington State. And the goal of IPMA is to increase the training and development of the IT workforce in the state. It's been around for over 60 years. And I'm on the board of the IPMA. That is how I've been able to create the Accessibility Matters Conference. And that will be again in October of this year. And open to all public sector employees.
And if you're in Washington or Oregon, Washington Department of Enterprise Services, DES has accessibility training. We do a writing for the web training on there. I'll throw the link in there. We have one coming up in May, but they have a lot of opportunities for public employees. I think that was all the questions I had, unless anyone has any other pressing things. We're all here. If you want to ask, feel free.
And I know we are at time, but I am happy to stay back if anybody has questions. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. And hopefully you took something from our project. And yeah,
Thank you
thank
all
you
so
for
much.
coming.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We will have a recording to share with you. Stay tuned.